Welcome back to the Bernard Lee Poker Show. We are celebrating National Women's History Month. Of course, it is sponsored by Poker League of Nations. Go to pokerleagueofnations.com for all the information. You can join free and have all of their free content. We're talking with the 2021 WSOP Ladies Champion, who took down the event I always say this past summer, but it's not this past summer. It's in October. Over 644 entries for over $115,000. Before we get to that event, let's talk a little bit about the Council Bluffs event and how it kind of probably prepared you for this. Because anytime, as I've talked to a lot of people, final tables are another beast altogether. Just to play in a final table, etc., because it is a sit and go with the biggest proportions up top, and also the chips are all not the same. When we talked to Gershon Distenfeld recently, when we're talking about a shootout, it's a different story. They do all start with the same chips at the final table, but obviously most tournaments, that's not the case. So talking about how important was it for you to experience these other final tables? I know you've made multiple. It's not Council Bluffs is the only one. I know you've made them at the World Series circuit in Baltimore as well, and also at MGMs. How important is it for you to have that experience prior to this ladies event so that you really kind of understand it and in all honesty, not be nervous? Because you see it all the time when somebody makes their first major final table. And listen, on this stage, WSOP Ladies event that's live streaming, this is a big event. I'm sure there might have been one or two of them that this is their first time ever making a final table.
Yeah, I think I had final table experience, and I think it's different. Like, playing online, obviously you get lots of final tables if you have a high volume.
Sure.
But it's different. It's different than playing live.
Absolutely.
And live poker is very different than online, in my opinion. There's just so much more information, and how people handle pressure is very different, and understanding how you handle pressure yourself is very important. And I think having had experience at multiple tables, final tables prior to the circuit event helped me for sure. In that, but I think the biggest thing that has helped me at live final tables in general has just been really trying to have no expectations, because I think that coming into events with expectations of really much tends to change how you play. If and that's why I sort of felt like coming into the ladies event as the shortest stack, I was like, this is great. Like, all I wanted to do was final table a major. That was like my only next bucket list thing. And it wasn't winning a bracelet would be great, but I hadn't even put that on there because it seems so remote. And the same thing with the circuit event. I think we came back with, I don't know, 3 or 4 tables or something like that. And you don't know that you're going to get to the final table. I had one crucial hand where I ended up making a huge semi bluff, and got snapped off by pocket queens and hit my card on, to make a flush on the river. And had that gone the other way, I'd have been out,
Right.
And there's always things like that on your way to every final table. But, I think having the experience under your belt of, just you've been there before, really, really helps. But I feel like I'm now way more prepared than I had been in the past, because of the training I got with Ape Styles, and then also now with Yargo and BBZ, we do a ton of ICM work, and so it really helps you understand how the dynamics work. And even if other people don't understand ICM, I think it's important to understand who does and doesn't know
Sure.
what ICM is. Otherwise, you end up making huge mistakes because you assume they're playing a game they aren't.
Right.
But still, it keeps you from making, bad mistakes,
Right.
less often.
Now, it's actually a very interesting point that you bring up with regards to the ICM or playing a different game. And I want to focus a little bit on the ladies event itself. I want to preface this by, I'm not trying to be derogatory saying that the ladies play worse than the men. That is not what I'm saying whatsoever. I've said this also when we've talked about a seniors event. What I'm talking about is a specific subset of No Limit Hold'em, right? You have a specific group of people who play, and because it's that specific group, they sometimes play a little differently than the general public of poker. When we go to a circuit event, you'll have a kind of an understanding. Now, even in that sense, you'll have players that play outside of the conventional norm, et cetera, and you're going to have to understand that. So after prefacing all of that, I want to talk about the ladies event. And so you go and play the ladies event because we are celebrating National Women's Health Month this month. And I'm hoping, one of the things, the reason why I did is I want to help build awareness for women, because I still specifically believe that the next potential, or one of the next potential booms in the world of poker, is getting more women involved in the world of poker. It is 50% of the world's population and only 3 to 4% of who play poker. Imagine if 10, 15% more people decide to play poker, there's a tremendous boom in poker. So I guess my first question to you is that let's just talk outside of the ladies event. Let's talk about poker in general for women. If you were to try to help inspire women to play poker, what would your advice be to them to say, hey, listen, it's not that bad. It's fun. Like, what would you say to somebody who's somewhat interested, but nervous for whatever reason?
Yeah, I think, I think things have changed over time. I mean, I know that like Linda can tell you, stories about the bad old days when people were, very patronizing and things like
Sure.
that. I never felt that. And I also, and that's just because of coming up in a different era of poker. But I think that there's going to be people who are super nice at your table. There's going to be people who are jerks, but that's true if you're a guy or if you're a woman.
Sure.
Guys are just jerks to guys in different ways than they're jerks to women. And there's plenty of women who can be mean too. And it's not like, oh, the women are all nice and it's the guys are all jerks. It's
Right.
it's just different. But I think, I do think that women aren't exposed to poker as much. Like, why wasn't I exposed to poker? I was a gamer. I liked, I was really into games, but poker
Mhm.
never even occurred to me to play till I saw it on TV, and now it's out there much more. But I think it's not on the like normal list of things that girls do growing up,
Mhm. Mhm.
whereas it is for guys. Like
Right.
guys, once they're like, especially if you're gonna get together with guys, have a beer, maybe people play poker or whatever. It's
Right.
something that is done, but it isn't with women. And it's hard to change that,
Sure.
because that's happening when people are kids.
Right. Right.
And then there
But
are a lot of,
would you say that if a woman is somewhat interested, right, and she's not been, kind of exposed to it, but for them to have, because in today's world we have so many opportunities. I mean, go on YouTube, go on anywhere to like just watch a WPT final table and just understand it, or just watch anything. Would you recommend them just kind of do that to kind of understand and experience it vicariously at least?
100%, yeah. And I think that, now with Poker Go and stuff like that, people can get excited because they can see. I mean, the whole cards up thing really does and has brought a lot to poker, I think. And I think Linda actually had quite a bit to do with that, if I recall correctly.
Yeah.
But I think that, then having a site like Jonathan Little's site that appeals to people across a broad spectrum of experience, I've steered people who are either new to poker, or new to wanting to actually take time to learn poker, or who are amateurs but are wanting to kind of take the next step in the right direction, towards his site for that reason, because there's a wide variety of content, and you can go in and take like one of his basic things, and really begin to understand the game, because there's so much to learn. At first, like after a while, you kind of forget about the fact that there was a point in time when like trying to understand like odds and things like that, that was hard.
Right. Right.
And now it's like you don't think about it. You don't think about like what, do I have to call here? It's like, oh yeah, I have to call here. I only need 20% or whatever. Like
Right. Right.
but that's not, you're not born with that,
Sure. Of course. 100%.
and so there's so much to learn at the beginning. But
What about specifically the ladies event? Like, so I've talked with some other ladies champions before, and they've talked about some of the slight differences and slight nuances of playing in a ladies event. Obviously, I've never and never will play in a ladies. I'm not that person that would do that. So I've never played in the ladies event. So what exactly, if somebody is out there who's listening and is saying like, I've always wanted to play in a WSOP event, maybe I'll give the ladies event a shot. What advice could you give them with regards to coming in and playing in an event, ladies event?
Yeah. First of all, I would say, to any woman, I think it's a fantastic event to play. I had played in very few ladies events before this event. In fact, I think I played in one at the circuit event in Baltimore, and that's the only other ladies event I think I've ever played. And it was fantastic. It was so much more fun than I expected, and it just because people were there, they wanted to enjoy themselves, they wanted to have a good time, and they wanted to play well. It's not that people weren't trying to play well. It's just that it wasn't so much, people trying to stare you down and, get into your soul or
Right.
get really pissed about this or that or the other thing.
Right.
People were very respectful. And even, you saw at the final table, people were hugging each other and, and just, very collegial. And that makes it, especially if you feel nervous or, if it's a situation you aren't as comfortable in, that helps you feel more comfortable, if you're somebody, kind of getting into things. So I think it's a really great place for somebody to have a first event.
What about, so great opportunity, person who's doesn't play much poker, let's give the ladies events a shot. It's very, like you said, very collegial. Now let's be a little picky in the sense of let's pick their games apart. What are some of the common mistakes that you see the first time? Because what you just said probably relates to maybe 10-15% of the field, maybe 5-10% of the field, where it is their first real big event. They're coming in and playing. I'm sure you are a well experienced player, not only in ladies events, in any event. So you're going to be able to analyze and kind of categorize the players. When you find a player that you quickly realize that this person doesn't really play much or doesn't know what they're doing or hasn't done the training to be prepared for this spot, what are some of the common mistakes that you have seen that you would kind of be able to tell these people, don't do that? You're giving it away.
Sure. And honestly, in that regard, I don't think there's any difference that I see very much between women and men when it comes to, just people not being that experienced. I think that, as you start to get towards higher and higher levels of experience within the category of just women, people are playing a lot more similar to each other, and a lot more similar to how top men or just top players in general play. I think that becomes a very homogenous group. I think if you take the much more recreational groups, men and women, I think within those buckets of people, I would say that you're going to see a much more aggressive variety more often from the male bucket than you are from the female bucket.
Right.
And, I think that's just our nature. It was true when I was in skydiving, because I did, mixed large formation events in skydiving, and I did women's only formation events in skydiving. And we were having to, as a captain on those teams, I was having to take the people on my teams and coach them very differently. With if I had a team that was mostly men, most of the time I was telling them, dude, slow down.
Right.
When you're coming into dock, you can't be aggressive. You got to have some nuance here and don't come in like a bull in a china shop. And then with the women, I was going, hey, we only have so much time up there. So get in there. And, and that's just, those were the generalizations. There were exceptions in each category.
Sure.
But I think that we're not taught to be as aggressive right out of the gate. And I think that women, that's not natural to as many women as it is natural to men. It's just what it is.
And would you find that if the amateurs or the players who are at that beginning level, if they had a little bit more aggression, that they would potentially be a little bit more successful? So in other words, are they just really kind of flat calling with hands that they might 3-bet with, or not check raising enough, or things like that? Look for spots for aggression that would actually give them a chance to win the hand right then and there, or B, give them an opportunity to accumulate more chips.
Right, I agree. And I think that, within the amateur bucket of men and women, whatever, I think that that is a similarity, like the passive play thing, whatever sex you are, that's just playing passively, is a tendency that people have when they're not that experienced. And it's partly it's fear of making a mistake, but partly it's because you don't know when you should be aggressive. And so just telling people, hey, just get out there and start being aggressive. Then people start, like I started doing that. I had a big event. I've told this now story a bunch of times, but at one of the very first WPT boot camp, I had Jan ended up telling me I played like a pussy. And hopefully I can say that on your show, because we did the sit and go, and she thought I was too passive. And I was like, wow, okay, that's a major slap. Like, I need to being aggressive. So I started just like being like randomly aggressive, which wasn't necessarily great either, because I still didn't know when to be aggressive. And so I think, it's more about, but yeah, trying to at least always think, if you want to play a hand, is it, can you play it aggressively? And, and when in doubt, choose the more aggressive line, because especially if somebody pegs you as a weaker or an amateur player and you take an aggressive line, you're going to get so much credit. I also would say that as a generalization, especially if you're a more amateur woman, if you come into an event, whether you're playing against men or women, you're going to be given a lot of credit in general. And I think that, I have had lots of times in the past where I've enjoyed being given a lot of credit because I'm a woman that's an unknown person, and people assume until proven otherwise that you're probably tight. And so, same thing with, as I get older and I get a few more grays in my hair, I'm looking forward to hopefully people also assuming that I may play more tightly. So you get away with that stuff for a bit.
I got the skunk patch right here. It's kind of hard to see right now, but no, I got the skunk patch. So yeah.
But so I think that that's good. I also think that people really underestimate the physical tell aspect of the game.
I was just about to ask that question. Like, how I see that a lot with amateurs, that they just don't realize. Like, I mean, they're not so obvious that they're like, oh darn, missed it. But like if you're watching for it, you can see it. And how is that sometimes more prevalent when you're playing in a ladies event?
I don't know. I wouldn't say it's more prevalent in the ladies event. It's just more prevalent with less experienced people. I mean, I had outrageous physical tells that I saw in the Millionaire Maker before I played the ladies event, coming from men. I mean, I literally had a guy who was unfortunately across the table from me, but whenever he wasn't going to play a hand, he didn't put a chip on a card after he checked. And then he was putting it on the card when he was playing it for sure, and then halfway on the card when he was going to see what happened. So I knew exactly. I just like raised absolutely everything when there was no chip on the card and he has the big blind. Like no matter what I had, I raised, and it was reliable 100%. And so people think that you don't see these things, but you do. But the reason people don't see them is because they can't stop playing on their phone.
They're just not paying attention. They're just not.
They're not paying attention. I've seen professionals lots of times. They're like watching run it once videos on their iPad at a major event and stuff. Like you can't. And so as an amateur, especially, like you sit and watch. And that also allows you to, your intuition will hone in. And that's true whether you're an experienced poker player or you're not. They did this study where they showed people the videos of just the hands. Did you see that one?
Yeah.
And the people who don't know how to play poker were able to guess more accurately than random, just watching people's hands, whether they had a strong or a weak hand by what their hand movements only. So that just tells you, like, hey, you know something about poker, even if you're an amateur, you're going to do better than average watching and paying attention.
Right. Let's talk a little bit about. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, for an amateur, I would say, like, systematize your stuff. Like, I don't want to tell people that because people give away so much information. But if, for those who are listening, just like have a plan, do the plan the exact same way every time. And like, think about what you're going to do.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Then execute it with your chips. People just give away all this information with their body movements.
Basically, what you're saying is whatever action you're going to do, whether you have a hand or you don't have a hand, do it the same way. I had one guy at a main event, and he would literally, no matter what it was, whether he would play or whether he would fold, he would wait.
That drives me nuts.
I know, it was really crazy. It was all day long, right? And it wasn't thankfully like 10, 20 seconds, but it was like 3 to 4 seconds. And it's very funny because for my count, it was like 3.5 seconds. It was like 1, 2, 3. And just as I was about to say 4, he would fold. And I was like, am I doing like, so I would wait. And it happened all day long. And
I mean, that's nuts if you're going to fold. If you're going to fold, just fold. Like, don't make everybody wait. That's like somebody that took a little nugget of information and went too far with it.
Well, it was funny. At the end of the day, I asked him, I said, so was your count 3 or 4? And he looked at me like, what? I go, You had to count. You would either fold on 3 or you would either fold on 4. And I just don't know what my counting is a little different than yours. He's like, it was 3. I was like, who told you? He goes, a friend of mine told me just to count to 3 before I do any action. I was like,
Except for fold, just fold.
exactly. I
That
know,
drives me
just,
crazy.
it was just too long. It was just very like one of the, but it was, it was one of those where you're just like, he's going to do something in 3. At least it was like, some of these guys do like 10, 20 seconds for
That's
no reason.
nuts. Yeah.
And it's like, come on, like just, do what you got to do. But this one was one of those where, 2, 3 muck, and at least it was, by the time you said something, he was already folding. So you couldn't really say anything to him, but it was,
right.
I know what you're saying. And,
it is
and
funny.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about, in the few minutes remaining, the event, the final table specifically. You get to the final table. And like you said, you weren't one of the chip leaders going into this final table. And I think it's a very good scenario. What you said is that don't go in with tremendous expectations. You kind of achieved your goal and let's play well. But if I'm correct, you also thought, let's not play stupid in the first 30 minutes that I'm on the live stream because everyone's going to watch. I don't want to make a dumb mistake here. And it may have prevented you from being knocked out right away, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think I didn't even know the thing was going to be live streamed until the end of the day before we had it.
Right.
And somebody said, oh, it's going to be on a stream. I was like, it is? I didn't, I was really, for that event, I was very like kind of in my own head and kind of dialed in. And I hadn't even like told everybody I know I'm going to be on this live stream and blah, blah, blah. Next day, I really just like kind of hunkered down and got prepared and just kind of chilled.
Yeah.
And but yeah, going into it, I really just wanted to know that I walked away making good decisions. And I had really gotten myself in a very good headspace to that end of just, I want to walk away, whether it's one decision and that's it, and it's correct and I'm out, or it's, I'm in the whole thing and I win it. Like whatever it is, I just want it to be that I played well. And, that I have control over. I don't have control over the cards that come out or how runouts go.
Right. And there was only 5 people left going into this. And you were as you mentioned previously, the short stack, not by a ton. You, JJ Liu, Diane Cooley, were all very, very close. You all had about 25 big blinds. And then the 2 chip leaders, they really separated themselves. They both had over 4 million. You guys all had about 1.2, and they had like 80 to 90 big blinds. So it was definitely the have and have nots in this scenario going into this. Very firsthand, to be honest, is very interesting. And it's very interesting for you to kind of talk it through, because I think that a lot of people, they don't necessarily do what you did. You and I have talked about this hand, but first hand right out of the gate, you raise from the button. Mind you, this is 5-handed. So you raise from the button, 125,000. JJ Liu, who is also a short stack, raises to only 300,000. Kind of min clicks it back almost. And the small from the small blind, the big blind folds, and then it comes back to you, and you have 8s. This is not like you were doing this with anything. The small blind in that scenario. So I want everyone just to kind of think about this moment. You be in this spot, you're on the button, you have 8s, a small blind kind of min raises you in this spot, has only 1.2 million. You make it 125. And this person raises and it comes back to you. Kind of what was your thought process? I won't say what you did, I'll let you say that, but what was your thought process?
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, initially, the first thing you think is just like, well, it's pocket 8s. I got to go with the hand. We're short here.
Right.
But like, what does go with the hand mean? Like, you can't, even though she made a very small 3-bet, like calling there and like hoping to hit a set of 8s isn't, you don't have the odds to really do
There's
that.
obviously going to be overcards. It's going to be a very tough spot moving forward.
Right. And so I did sort of feel like, and I mean, even though that is an option, I felt like, I kind of need to jam or fold here.
Right.
And there were several things as I sat there and thought that made me lean towards folding, which seemed, crazy versus a small 3-bet, but the small 3-bet was part of it. So, with most of her hands that aren't like super excited, she wants to take advantage of some fold equity, and she's going to be out of position in the hand if I do call. So why is she 3-betting me so small? And that was extremely alerting. And then So there was that aspect of it. Number two was, even though JJ is known to be a very aggressive player, she'd been playing very, appropriately, in the last two tables, and, she wasn't being wild, and she wasn't doing anything that seemed out of line to me at all. And is she going to choose that this moment, the first hand of a streamed final table, is the moment that she's just going to be super splashy and do something goofy? Like, what is she doing this with that I'm super excited to see? Because she can be doing it with ace king or ace queen, but would
Sure.
she? Or would she just jam it in
Or
with
she just
25
jam it
bigs?
right there. Right.
Right, because
Exactly.
you don't really want to have me to call, and then I've got pocket queens, and it's three low cards, and now what do you do? And you're in this
Right.
awful spot yourself. Does she do it with a pair that I beat? Does she do that with sevens?
Right.
Does she do that with sixes? Never. I
Right.
don't think. And so what does that leave her with? It leaves her with bigger pairs than mine. I
Right.
don't think she does it with nines or tens either. She probably sticks those in,
Yep.
which
Yep.
leaves me in horrible shape. And then the more I sat, the more relaxed she seemed to me.
Mm,
And she also started flipping a chip, like a
mm,
really casual, very
hmm.
loose, casual. Just there, everything about it just said she's super comfortable to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
all of that, like as soon as I started to see her flip that chip like that, I just folded.
Yeah.
Because I was like, there's just no flop I like other than one with an eight, and I can't
Right.
call here.
Right. Right.
So I just folded.
It, obviously incredible decision. Later on, people find out, or you find out. Obviously, the live stream knew, but she had aces, and it makes sense, right? Like the reason why we're talking about this hand is I really think I try to give everyone strategy on this show as well, and I really think that this is a hand that I think if you're just talking about it in a very, very small microcosm, people talk about hands just like this at pub leagues, small buy-in tournaments, and they literally say, "What could I have done?" And
Hmm.
everyone says, "Yeah, you're right. I mean, you had a pair, you got to go with it." But
Yeah.
I think that really talking it through and understanding what we're talking again, in certain situations, yeah, you do have to go with it. But in this specific spot, you still had 20 big blinds left. It's not like you have like 8 big blinds. What am I going to do as life goes on? There are certain things that lead up to it. And I really want to get everyone to understand how to look at a situation and make a decision from it. You could have been wrong. I'm not saying
Yep.
that you are 100% always going to be right, but at least think through the situation and understand it. And I think that that's really important for people to really understand and go with. And from there, you live with the consequences. But if you can talk through hands, and that's something I talk a lot about when I used to teach WPT boot camp, and I teach private students now, is that understand the thought process and be able to explain that thought process, and then go with your decision from there. It could be wrong, but
Yep.
at least you didn't just be like, what could I do? And this went, that kind of thing. You really went through it. So I really like that hand of going through that and understanding it. Obviously,
Thanks.
you get down to it was already 5-handed going into it right away, and it was one of those scenarios. Like I said, you are relatively short stacked. You don't have much time from there, because obviously the blinds are going to start kicking in pretty quickly, but you only have 5 players. So it's going to go relatively quickly. This isn't going to be a 7, 8, 9 hour event because there's only 5 players left. It gets pretty quickly. If a couple hours later, you end up now heads up in this event. At that moment, is it almost like, I can't believe this is actually happening? Or were you just still pretty calm and like you said, no expectations? Did the expectations start slowly creeping in? Like, I'm this close to a bracelet.
I didn't. I honestly just didn't. I really like, and that's why I was like so kind of almost just like surprised when it was suddenly over. It kind of happened so fast,
Yeah.
and I had had my expectations so low that I
Yeah.
really didn't like think like, oh my God, like I mean, I did take conservative lines in some places where, because I felt like the only way I could really mess things up would be, like after I doubled up, I played like more conservatively in a couple of spots against Mikio, because I felt she was a very strong player and I didn't want to double her up again.
Sure.
At a time when she got short. And so, in one spot, for example, when it folded to me in the small blind and I had Jack 7 suited, the correct play there is just to jam and not allow her to get to see a flop. Because there was she had 20 bigs and there was somebody with 15, I think, at the table, or maybe she had a little bit less, but I want to double her back up,
Right.
and give her a chance of being able to, play aggressively against me to my left.
Right.
So I played more conservatively, ended up, getting lucky in the hand and winning it anyway. But, I think there's certain times where I made certain adjustments based on this, not wanting to, I didn't care. I never even actually looked at the payouts to know what the pay jumps were, because I didn't care what the payouts were.
Right.
And it's not because like, oh, I only care about first or stuff like that. It's just like, it's not going to affect what I do. So I just never paid. I mean, I think I looked at them, I'm sure, at some point, but I didn't like go, oh, the next pay jump is, 15,000 or it's this or that. And whereas in other tournaments, I really have, I've known about, this and that, especially when there's not a bracelet also in the mix, it's just pay jumps are all there are. So like knowing what they are is pretty important in general, and probably something I should pay more attention to. But at the time, I just thought I'm just making good decisions one hand at a time and see what happens.
Well, obviously that's worked out very well for your favor. Now you are a bracelet winner. Do you wear it around much if you go out and play with your buddies?
I've never worn it. It's not sized for little girl wrists. I thought about taking off
I thought you can get it sized, like take off the ringlets or whatever.
Well, you can, but you'd have to like this. I have it here, but you'd
nice.
have to take out of it has 4. It has like one of each suit on the side. I'd have to shorten it and take off 2 of each side, but then they don't match. Then you've only got hearts and spades.
They should.
You don't have the full thing.
You should make that comment to them to like have it the other way.
I want to complain about my bracelet design. I'm sure like gets a lot of sympathy.
Jack will love you for that one.
Right, exactly. So I thought about it, and then actually, somebody said it was going to be very difficult to actually make it smaller. So I haven't.
Maybe you can put some like cushion inside.
Where there's a
like,
necklace.
like a dog collar. But you can maybe put some cushion inside or something like that to make it smaller.
There you go. Make me have a big wrist.
Exactly.
But
well, congratulations.
Thanks.
What a great victory. It's always great to talk with good, it's, as we jokingly always say, it's good when good things happen to good people. We're happy for you. And
thanks so much, Bernard.
Congratulations on your win, and hopefully we'll have more interviews on this for other victories in the future.
That would be amazing. Good luck to you too, Bernard.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Congratulations to Lara Eisenberg, who won the 2021 WSOP Ladies Championship. Continuing next week, we will have more interviews during the National Women's History Month. We'll have interviews with other women who have won championships, but also women who have had a very significant role in the world of poker. And as always, may you always go in with the best hand, and may you never get unlucky. Good night, everybody.